Well, the moment you've all been waiting for has finally arrived. We're almost at the end of the month, and this is the Tech Data and AI Roundup on the CarCast with Stephanie Wong. Stephanie, how are you doing?
I am doing great. I have had an awesome week in tech, but the weekends are for family, so I'm bringing some pastries to my grandma today.
Oh, wow. I'm super jealous about that. All right, and you've got some new sunglasses, so you're definitely keeping us on our toes. Today, we're going to cover some of the most exciting moments that you might have missed this month. Things like the top data and AI facts that you should be aware of. In fact, we have a link to a resource that Steph and I put together that has all these facts so you can access them anytime you need them. We're going to talk about the difference between SLMs and LLMs, which Steph's going to take us to. And we're also launching a brand new survey that's going to help you make you think about your role, your salary, particularly as the end of the year approaches. So let's get started. Steph, what's been going
Yes.
on for you?
There has been so much going on in the industry these days. It's actually pretty hard to slow down, step back, and get some perspective, right?
Exactly. And that's why we created this, because we thought there's so much going on that a recap of everything that's going on in the month in less than 20 minutes could be helpful. So if you're new to this and you're new to the CarCast, make sure you subscribe to the newsletter. It's also helpful if you subscribe to the YouTube playlist so you can get the videos as we publish them. So why don't we get started with the file that has all the AI and data facts that we've assembled for our listeners. Steph, take us through what's in there.
Yeah, so many of you have told us how inundated you are with new information. So we've gone ahead and distilled the main facts in data, AI, and analytics that will make you smarter. So you can think about it as a fact sheet of data facts that you can pull from any time you need to have access to some useful facts. Think of it like a cheat sheet. So I've gone ahead and highlighted for you some of the facts you should keep track of. Like the first one here, at least 44% of organizations are reallocating budgets to fund generative AI projects. Are we really surprised here? I mean, on one hand, Gen AI has the potential to revolutionize industries. On the other hand, there's also a risk of overinvesting. Not every project is going to pan out. We've seen some hype cycles in tech before. So I think it's critical to focus on real business outcomes as you're experimenting, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's really one of the issues that people have. I think every customer I talk to, they wonder, okay, what team do I hire? How do I budget for this? Where does the budget come from? What should be the size of the budget? So hopefully this will make people feel a little better.
Yeah. So, fact number two, lines of businesses are major contributors to Gen AI funding. So, this is actually quite a departure from the traditional model where IT or engineering were the gatekeepers of AI projects. Now, lines of business are recognizing this transformative power of Gen AI and they're eager to invest and leverage it to solve their business problems. I think this is a good thing.
Yeah, this is an interesting one because I think if anything, Gen AI has really excited a lot of business users on the opportunity to interface with the data. So I think it makes a lot of sense. Of course, you can't just unleash the power of Gen AI without governance, security, and having your IT kind of be in the loop, particularly if you're thinking about enterprise Gen AI. So I think for people listening to us, they're probably gonna have to balance the excitement with the reality of enterprise Gen AI.
Exactly. Now, for 2028, this is a few years from now, but the prediction is that more than 50% of enterprises that have built LLMs from scratch will actually abandon some of their efforts due to cost, complexity, and technical debt in their deployments. I think that's a bold trend, but it's not entirely surprising, right? Building an
Yeah.
LLM from scratch is a massive undertaking, and it's technically and financially a lot. It's like trying to build your own rocket ship. Sure, you could do it, but it's going to be expensive, time consuming, and it comes with risks. So, what's the alternative? For many organizations, the answer lies in leveraging pre-trained LLMs. These models are already built and trained, by these model providers, so you can skip the heavy lifting and focus on fine-tuning them for your needs. It's kind of like buying a car off the lot instead of building one from scratch.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I think a lot of CIOs I talk to, they're looking for stabilization of what's going on in this world so they can figure out, okay, what do I need to build versus what I need to borrow from. So makes a lot of sense that you'll see a lot of that.
Now, those are just three of the facts, but you can send us your own facts. We'll add them to the sheet for you. And as a community, we can continue to stay on top of everything that's going on here.
That's right. And so that's really going to be a powerful resource for all of us. So you can send us your facts. Let us know what you think about those facts. We try to keep the date as well as the source. So if you want to use them in your daily life, you know where to go back to. Now, there are a few of these facts I'd like to drill into, particularly this idea of assistants versus agents. We saw the launch of Swarm this month. Swarm is a framework for multi-agent workflow orchestration. Now, the framework is experimental, and but I still think it highlights three of the key concepts that you got to be thinking about if you're in the market. I've linked down here a video from my friend Kevin, the Chief Product Officer of OpenAI. And so if you follow me on LinkedIn, you'll see kind of the talk where he explains a lot of that. It's a little bit of a longer talk. So let me break it down to the few concepts I think you need to think about. The first one is this idea of what's the difference between an agent and an assistant? So in general, an assistant is focused on a task or set of tasks that it executes within a context. The context can be a specific application. Think about a BI Copilot, for instance, or maybe a specific cloud for IT efficiency, or maybe a domain, like let's say it's an assistant for coding. So that's typical of what you'll see. And agents, they tend to then be collaborative. They'll work with other agents. They'll work with other humans to execute a job. If you're not familiar with the concept of the jobs to be done, I'll put a resource for you on that. It's a very powerful way to think about how we solve problems for people. And the idea of an agent is, in addition to collaboration, it also has a little bit more agency or autonomy, if you like, so it can orchestrate how things happen. Now, we're not at a stage of iRobot just yet, so it's important not to blow this out of proportion. But the key distinction between agent and assistant is that assistants tend to be bound to silos, whereas the agents can be cross-domain. They can be orchestrated as a group, in a network, in a mesh. And so there's a lot to be excited about for this idea of agent, mesh, and agentic frameworks. The next key concept you'll learn in the video is this concept of distillation, which I think Steph will talk a little bit about here. You can distill a larger model into smaller, more efficient models. So you can imagine a world where you have multiple agents leveraging multiple models and execute on a multiplicity of tasks in concert, hopefully cost effectively and logically. So it's quite fascinating. Of course, you think about what we can start building, it's now building into complexity. But if you're a CIO, of course, this can get really complex real fast, which is why there's stepping back and look at how you orchestrating all of that is really critical. How do you think about security? How do you think about governance? How do you think about cost? This is not going to be a small consideration. So on one side, excitement about everything that's possible. On the other side, you can think about orchestration, governance, and so forth. Now, it is true that some of the models are now 90% cheaper to run than they were 18 months ago. So that's exciting. And it's, in fact, one of the facts that we're highlighting in The Economist. I think it's line 38 in our document. So take advantage of that. But the cost is still high. Running a search through Gen AI can be 10 times more expensive, use 10 times more electricity than a Google search. And the cost of asking an AI model to answer a query can be anywhere between $2,400 to $223,000, according to The Economist, depending, of course, on the complexity of the task. So the cost is not going to be something to underestimate. So while we're excited about the agentic frameworks, you got to think about how you manage the complexity without breaking the bank, without exposing your company and your data and your employees.
And this is a great segue into my favorite topic these days, which is the difference between SLMs and LLMs.
Yeah, tell us about that, Steph. You've done a lot of work on that.
You've all probably heard, of course, of LLMs, large language models, but more and more we're hearing about SLMs, which are small language models. Why? Because although LLMs are powerful and they can do so much, they can also sometimes be overkill and resource intensive for certain tasks, which is what you were mentioning, Bruno. So enter SLMs. Think of SLMs as these nimble, specialized sort of ninjas of the AI world. They're trained and distilled on specific data sets, so they're like experts in a very particular field. So, for example, if you need a chatbot that knows everything about your product, an SLM may be enough. They're lean, mean, very efficient. They're perfect for smaller scale applications. Now, LLMs are the heavyweight champs here. They've been trained on massive amounts of data, so they're like the Swiss Army knives of these Gen AI models. They can do everything from generating creative text to translating languages, but they can also be more resource intensive, right? You need a whole server farm potentially to build and fine tune them. So which one should you choose? It depends on your needs, of course. SLMs are great for focused tasks, while LLMs can be more versatile. But, remember, bigger isn't always better. Sometimes a specialized SLM can actually just get the job just fine. In the end, the best approach might be hybrid. So in these agentic frameworks, for example. You might use SLMs for specific tasks and an LLM for more general purpose parts of your application. So it's kind of like having a team of experts working together.
Yeah, this really brings to light this idea that when you think about assistants and agents, the size is not the only thing to consider. You might need a dual model size strategy so you can work through the issues like performance and cost, security, transparency and input and output, and best in class integration. This integration bit, I think, is not something you want to underestimate. Like, there's a lot of use cases where you want to take advantage of the multimodal capabilities of model. Like, for instance, my best use case is when I take a picture of a chart. For instance, I drop it into Gemini and say, just create a table for me. Really unique that it can do that, and it's super helpful. Certainly a boost in my productivity. I know you use these models a lot. So what's your favorite use case, Steph?
Well, recently, as you know, I've been really fascinated by Google's Notebook LM. It's kind of like a personalized AI research assistant. You've probably seen a ton of content of people doing podcasts and AI generated conversations, but you can actually do a lot more than that in the tool. You can upload any set of sources like research papers, documents, transcripts. You can convert complex materials into FAQs, briefing docs, study guides, and they're all grounded in these sources. So I've used it recently to even write, for example, my wedding ceremony script, which is fun. I uploaded a bunch of questions that my fiance and I answered about each other, how we met, all this, our story. And then I said, hey, can you cohesively use these sources as grounding sources and come up with a potential ceremony script that we can use as like a starting point? So it's great. I think it's fun. There's so many ways to generate multimodal assets from it too.
Wow, that's super creative. You're bringing Notebook LM to your wedding. I did not expect that
Yeah.
answer. All right. Well, there's so much more we can talk about here. I want to make sure that we point people to the survey that we're launching, because this is about you. This is about your money. If you think about the end of the year, do you feel like you're getting paid what you're worth? Do you feel that your education or maybe your location, in fact, has a material impact on your salary? And we want to know how many of you expect that you'll be making more next year. So November is the right time of the year to think about that. We know lots of people over the holiday season, they're thinking about, well, is this the right job? Is this the right company? Is this the right salary? And we never really know. And so the answers of these questions is probably going to come from the 2025 data survey that we are putting together. It's the data salary survey. It's real simple, 10 questions, does not require an email for you to answer it. So it's very important that everybody knows it's anonymous. We don't want to know your personal information. It's also free. And the idea is that when you sign up for the newsletter, you'll get access to the overall report before we put it out in the wild, but you also get a sense of what is the community thinking about these questions. So we're dropping a link to that down here. Share it with as many people as you can. Remember, it is 100% anonymous. And then, of course, when we get the final results, Steph and I will do a survey data salary breakdown for you. So you can, as you sign up to this channel, you'll get access to that video as the first audience.
Yeah, a breakdown like this is something I wish I had long ago. And there are some sites and different resources out there, but I kind of find them incomplete. It's especially important for women in tech like myself to understand where we fit in. And as for education level and salary, I get a ton of questions about whether like a master's degree is worth it. I tell folks, hey, it always depends on your current position and your goals, but I'm not sure it might have the same value it used to have in, especially in tech. But seeing the data across individuals would be super helpful to test my hypothesis here.
These salary surveys tend to be really popular, particularly now. So we're hoping that you'll be able to share with your network, and we'll hopefully there'll be a ton of insights coming out for it. All right, so this concludes it for all of us now. We know you get a ton of value out of this. So if you do, please subscribe to the newsletter, subscribe to the channel. Don't be shy about sharing it. Again, link to the survey is down here. So I can't wait to see the results with all of you, and we will see you very soon.